On today's episode of Locked On Wild, two defensemen who might slide to 13, plus a big-bodied forward the Wild could take a look at with their first-round pick.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. With the playoffs over for the NHL, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we take a look at the draft profiles for Zeev Buium, Zayne Parekh, and Liam Greentree as we continue to gear up for the NHL Draft. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider. I got to tell you, folks, we're going to do a draft profile here. You're probably going to get a second episode today because the Detroit Red Wings made a move today, and I'm starting to connect some pieces in my head as to what could come next. So be on the lookout for a second episode coming later this evening, but wanted to get a few more draft profiles up for you. And you can find all of these on YouTube, each individually clipped. So you get the about 10-minute profile for each player, and you can view those at your leisure. Most importantly, once the Minnesota Wild make their selection, we've got them right there ready to rock for you, so you can get some instant thoughts as to what each particular player brings to the table. So, who is Zeev Buium? Buium is a 6 foot, 185 pound left shot prospect in the 2024 NHL Draft, a defenseman, and played with the University of Denver this past season, in which the Denver squad ended up winning the Natty. So some pedigree that Buium brings to the table. In 42 games for the University of Denver this season, had 11 goals, 39 assists, 50 total points in 42 games. And then on the World Junior Championships, under 20 team, had 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 total points in the 7 games. He played on the U.S. National U18 team last year, had 40 points in 63 games, then played on the USA under 18 team in the World Junior Championships, had a goal and 5 assists. And on the U.S. National Development Team Prospect Juniors, had 2 goals, 10 assists, 12 total points in 23 games. He played at Shattuck St. Mary's and was a solid point producer there. But again, as a defenseman, like the numbers that he put up, pretty impressive, especially this past season. Elite Prospects has this to say about Buium. Buium scans ahead of each retrieval, plans his escape route in advance of collecting the puck, makes sure to draw in at least one forechecker, and then beats them with near comical ease, keying a clean breakout and activating into the rush. He is intelligent, deceptive, skilled, even creative in a part of the game where being efficient would suffice. Also related to of the Detroit Red Wings, Shai Buium is one of his brothers, so already has some pedigree in the NHL as well. Let's get to Scott Wheeler's thoughts on Zeev Buium for this draft. Buium put together one of the better seasons by a teenage defenseman in recent college history this year, producing at or above the rates of some established NHL stars and elevating again and again in big moments, the World Juniors, the NCHC tournament, and finally for the national championship to stamp himself as a top 10 pick. Because of his December 2005 birthday, Buium, the younger brother of Red Wings prospect Shai, who he got to jointly win the Natty with at Denver, entered the national program a year ahead of Cole Yzerman and company. Last year, in his second season at the NTDP, he really hit his stride, becoming a driver for the U18s. But this season, after growing a little, he was listed at 5'11" last year and is now listed at 6 feet by NHL Central Scouting. He not only maintained his identity in college, but really expanded upon it, playing leading minutes and impacting play in all areas with his very active brand of hockey. He's a plus-level skater and handler who plays an extremely involved game in all three zones, whether that's activating into the rush or off the point, shaking pressure on exits or across/off the blue line, which he does extraordinarily well, making opposing players miss, working in and out of give and goes, or playing tight gaps against the rush. He's a very busy player on both sides of the puck, and he gets in and out of his transitions and footwork so quickly that he can play that style. When he's dialed in, applying pressure on and off the puck and using his feet and his skating to influence play, he can really impact a game in a lot of ways. His skates and deception have gone from a strength to a game-breaking or darn close quality. His head is always on a swivel. He opens up and walks the line to create lanes for his shot and pass so well, even working off of his offside. He sidesteps past opposing players with ease. He's got great hands, complemented by those inside edges and shoulder fakes. Some questioned his lack of physicality, with one scout even calling him soft early on in the year, but those questions were emphatically put to bed with the way he defended in the second half, going to work on some of the more talented forwards in college hockey defensively. He learned that the faster he cuts off plays, the more he can play offense, and really began to take space more assertively defensively on top of all of his stick work and footwork. He has played some very good hockey for a while now, last spring to finish strong at the NTDP, again at the World Junior Summer Showcase, again at the World Juniors, where he was pretty clearly one of USA's 4 best D as its youngest, and then all year as a big-time freshman with the Pioneers. He was viewed as a late first, early second rounder coming in and turned everyone into a believer with his play. He projects to be a top 4 playing, driving, offensively involved defenseman with a chance at stardom. Here is a little bit more on Zeev Buium from the Hockey Writers. Jesse Corville Lynch putting this profile together. Some of the rankings from various outlets. Couple of Hockey Writers had him 7th and 8th. Baracchini had him 7th. Horn had him 8th. NHL Central Scouting had him 4th. Bob McKenzie 13th. Sportsnet 8th. Future Considerations 8th. And Dauber Prospects midseason rankings had him 5th. So here's what Corville Lynch had to say about Zeev Buium. While he may not be the top defender heading into the 2024 NHL entry draft, Zeev Buium is a player many fans should learn the name of. He is a smooth skating defender with strong skills at both ends of the ice and has an extremely high IQ. He has maintained over a point-per-game average in the NCAA with the University of Denver this season and has established himself as a first-round lock heading into the upcoming draft. There is no real consensus as to who will be picked where after Macklin Celebrini almost surely goes first overall, leaving Buium's fate up in the air as to where he could truly be drafted. He might be the most well-rounded defender in this upcoming draft class, considering his IQ at both ends of the ice, and could be someone a team takes a gamble on, as he seems to only be getting better as the days go by. While he doesn't play a flashy style of game, he is still able to be evasive on the rush and create chances for himself and his teammates. His smooth skating is something that could get the attention of plenty of NHL teams, and he could be considered one of the strongest skaters in the draft class. He can find open space with his speed and ability to move laterally while moving up the ice, and his speed with the puck on his stick is simply phenomenal. His production offensively may draw some worries from fans who believe he is too one-sided, but that just isn't the case. He is just as strong offensively as he is in his own end. For reference, Buium is producing at a 1.22 points per game, which is the highest for a defenseman in NCAA history. As crazy as it sounds, Buium could go as high as second overall in the 2024 draft. It's unlikely, but his skill set and his production levels are simply out of this world. This writer would consider him underappreciated and underrated heading into the draft, and if he slips out of the top 10, he would be a steal for any team that ends up bringing him in. His shot isn't talked about a lot, but when he chooses to use it, it is accurate and powerful. It can either find the back of the net or cause havoc in front of the net by generating a rebound. NHL Draft projection from Jesse Corville Lynch of the Hockey Writers. There's not a lot of consensus between mock drafts as to where Buium will be drafted. However, he should be considered a guaranteed first-round pick and is likely locked to be selected before the 15th overall selection. In all likelihood, he should be selected anywhere between 6th and 12th overall, depending on team fit and need at the time of their respective selections. His NHL potential. Buium has the potential to be a top 4 defender in the NHL if he continues to focus on the little things in his game and progress them. It's unlikely he will make it into the NHL next season, and one more season at the junior level should benefit his development. Whichever team ends up taking him will have a future potential star on their hands. So some of the things that I like, again, the reason that we keep discussing these defensemen is that, as we've seen with drafts all the time, is there is potential for a player who's expected to go in one spot to just be passed on by that team because for whatever reason, their evaluation of him was not as high as others. And so then he slides. So Buium obviously, and Trav in the YouTube comments is going to fist pump at discussing Buium. While it may be more likely he goes higher, the pedigree is what I am most impressed with Buium, is the ability to play on both sides of the ice, the ability to contribute offensively, and to be great defensively too. Buium having just won the national championship, and just frankly being one of the best players on the ice during that entire time. That's what more can you ask for? That's the key for, I think, a lot of these players is, are they stand out? Do they stand out amongst their peers, or are they somebody that kind of falls on the wayside as when the going gets tough? And Buium is somebody who has just he just has produced at an impressive level, and offensively being able to contribute as a defenseman is very that's a plus point as well. So Zeev Buium would certainly be a solid pick for the Minnesota Wild at number 13 if he slides out of the top 10. We will continue our draft profiles here on today's episode of Locked on Wild. We're going to talk about Zayne Parekh coming up. We'll also discuss Liam Greentree to finish off the show. That's all on the way on today's episode of Locked on Wild. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, now that the Stanley Cup Final is taken care of, we are getting to the point in the summer where the sports start to wind down a little bit. You've got Major League Baseball. You have, some of those other underappreciated sports throughout the summer as well. And even though the sports may not be sportsing the way that I would like them to, FanDuel can help keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime you are in the mood. Plus, this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. My philosophy has been to just go with whoever the Chicago White Sox are playing. Chicago is not a good team. And so your odds of hitting a successful bet while the White Sox are in play, pretty good. So just take a peek at whoever the White Sox are playing if you're in a state in which sports betting is legal. Just go look at who the White Sox are playing, and you are going to be in a pretty good spot. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we are your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day of the week. Reminder, as I mentioned, Detroit with an interesting trade, but it kind of has gotten the wheels turning in my head. And so we're going to talk about if the Detroit Red Wings are setting themselves up as potential trade partners for the Minnesota Wild. So keep an eye out for that coming later here today. But back to the draft profiles. Who is Zayne Parekh? Parekh is a 6 foot, 181 pound right shot prospect for the 2024 NHL Draft. And for Parekh, he is also a defenseman. So another name that could potentially slide depending on how the board plays out. Here's what Elite Prospects had to say about Zayne Parekh. Parekh is a legitimate manipulator. He doesn't wait for holes to open up in the defensive coverage to make a play. He bends opponents to his will and makes those openings for himself. A combination of fakes, feints, look-offs, and handling skill sends would-be checkers into the spin cycle, and out of each cloud of dust emerges Parekh, activating into space to improve the condition of each play before making his decision with the puck. Some of Parekh's stats: he played with the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL this past season. Get this: 33 goals, 63 assists. He had 96 points in 66 games with Saginaw, then had 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 total points in 12 playoff games as well. Last year, he had 21 goals, 16 assists, 37 total points with Saginaw in 50 games, and played in the GTHL for a couple of years before that with the Markham Majors and the Toronto Junior Canadiens. Scott Wheeler has this to say about Zayne Parekh. Parekh has turned me into a total believer over the last 2 seasons, even though that's not the case for everyone. He might even be in a special tier offensively. Last season, despite playing in just 50 of Saginaw's 68 games after missing 3 weeks due to injury from the end of February into March, and another couple for the World Under-17 Hockey Challenge, where he scored 3 goals and 5 points in 7 games as the highest scoring defenseman on a 4th place finishing Canada Black. He still broke the OHL's all-time goals record by a U17 defenseman, scoring 21 times and regularly looking dynamic on the puck as a rookie. An OHL Cup All-Star and first-round pick into the OHL before that, Parekh was then the most talented offensive defenseman in junior hockey this year, winning the CHL's Defenseman of the Year award and scoring and producing at an all-time great draft year rate, breaking the 30-goal and 90-point mark as the leading scorer on the Memorial Cup hosts by more than 20 points. He was also extremely impactful against the 3 best teams in the CHL at the Memorial Cup. Though he has missed some playoff games due to an upper body injury, I'm told he also played through in the games he did play in. He was also still a difference maker for Saginaw in the postseason when played. He plays an aggressive and natural offensive style that looks to attack off the line into the slot or even the front of the net or below the goal line. He'll also regularly involve himself in the rush, much like a winger does, driving down the wall in control to look to challenge defenders and attack into his shot or create an odd man rush. He's extremely confident on offense and opening up his feet where necessary around the zone without going to his heel-to-heel by default. He's got great hands and a casual-looking skating posture. He's got excellent feet crossing over and falling onto his heels, but he does lack speed in straight lines going forward, which he uses to carry pucks with a visual ease and beat the first layer of pressure to get to his spots. When the puck arrives on his stick, it just seems to stop and glue to him through his movements. A very rare quality that almost makes him look lackadaisical with the puck because it's settled so easily into his pocket and upright stance. He likes to roam, but he's also learning to pick his spots better, and his head is constantly on a swivel to identify where he is in relation to his teammates. When he plays freely, which is almost always, you're drawn to him whenever he touches the puck because he's always a threat to make something happen, and he sees and identifies plays early. He protects the puck extremely well with players leaning on him, escaping situations you wouldn't expect him to, and often avoiding contact with deft little pre-planned plays, though he'll also take a hit to make a play. He's got great footwork and edges to manipulate across the line and stop up along the boards to change directions or to maintain gaps. Wheeler says, I know some scouts were interested to see how he'd do at the CHL NHL Top Prospects game on ice testing, and he performed well. He's still not the fastest going forward, but his maneuverability compensates. And I also believe he defends at a high enough level to be given free rein to go out there and be himself offensively. Though his defense has been a common criticism among scouts at times, Wheeler would argue he's got a great stick, which is long and which he hides really well until an opportunity to be disruptive presents itself, and reads the play at a high level in anticipation. Wheeler has liked what he's seen from him on the penalty kill, and even though he definitely doesn't play a physical style and can get exposed for not being hard enough in engagements, Wheeler thinks he's made important progress in his own zone, and he's also become a very chippy, mouthy, pest-like player. There are times when his posture will look disengaged and upright, and you'd like him to really get low and battle, but he's playing to win pucks with his stick and does so quite well. He's never going to be a staunch defender. Add in a frame that is a little more mature, and Wheeler thinks people realize and give him credit for that he is a very good communicator. He's constantly talking on the ice, passes that are almost always tape to tape and perfectly flat, and ability to draw penalties, escaping pressure as well as just about anyone in the draft. He is never in trouble. And a want to have the puck and make a difference. And there's a very high-end package. He played huge minutes for a top team this season. They never sheltered him because they needed him out there, and they trusted him. And if he can defend at a reasonable level in the NHL, which Wheeler believes he'll be able to, he's got star power offensively. He won't be for every team, but Wheeler says he would pick him early without much hesitation and bet on the rare skill. Here's what the hockey writers have to say. Jordan Orth putting this profile together. And Orth notes that the rankings, NHL Central Scouting has Parekh 10th. Craig Button, his midseason rankings had him 8th. The hockey writers, Baracchini had him 8th. Horn 11th, and Forbes 8th. Bob McKenzie has him 9th. McKean's Hockey 10th. Sportsnet 7th. FC Hockey 11th, and Dobber Prospects 6th. Here's what Orth has to say. After a rookie season in the 2022-2023 season that saw Zayne Parekh set the Ontario Hockey League record for most goals from a defenseman aged 17 or younger with 21 goals, While benefiting from playing alongside Pavel Mintyukov for the first 37 games of the season, he showcased his strong offensively minded game. His 2023-2024 season has seen even more growth offensively, while also improving his defensive game. He has quarterbacked the Spirit's top power play unit, which sits toward the top of the OHL rankings, while showcasing his strong passing and playmaking abilities. He has not shied away from shooting the puck either, though letting his strong shot be on display a lot. He has also taken on roles in all situations for the team, becoming one of their top penalty killers. His offensive game is only the beginning of Parekh's arsenal. He has possibly some of the softest and best hands of all the defensemen in this year's draft class, which has made him getting through the neutral zone on rushes look rather easy. His stick handling has also come in handy while making quick moves in the offensive zone to make escape-type moves when pressured to give himself more space to make a play in the zone. His strong, smooth skating has also helped factor into his strong play through the neutral zone. This has helped Parekh set Saginaw Spirit records for defensemen in a season in a few different categories. While Parekh's offensive game and play with the puck have been massive bright spots in his game, his defensive game is lacking from time to time. He seems to lack a sense of urgency to make plays in his end of the ice, and his lackadaisical play has come back to haunt him a few times this season. Even though his smooth skating has been a positive for him, it has also been at times nonchalant, creating turnovers and rushes for his opponents. Overall, though, Parekh can keep his opponents in check defensively thanks to his good closing speed and stick work while defending. Parekh's draft projection, with the 2024 draft being stocked with defensemen at the top of the class, Parekh maybe find himself being the 4th or 5th defenseman taken in the draft. He could find himself slotting anywhere from early to mid-teens, from the early to mid-teens come June. And his NHL potential. Parekh has all of the potential to have the same impact that his former teammate Mintyukov has had for the Anaheim Ducks due to his offensive game. With the right development and added muscle and weight to his frame, he could become a top 4 defenseman on whatever team takes him, while also being able to man a power play unit as well. The biggest question mark on his game transitioning to the next level comes down to the transition of his style being viewed as loose. While the system that the Saginaw Spirit runs allows him to do this, the NHL game is slightly different. A comparison for Parekh is a mix of Cale Makar, Adam Fox, and Quinn Hughes. His skating ability is reminiscent of both Makar and Hughes, while his offensive skill set is comparable to all 3 current NHLers. So there you have it. Zayne Parekh, another potential option for the Wild at 13. Obviously, the offensive talent is unrivaled amongst the rest of the players in this draft. But I worry a little bit about the defensive side of things. This would be a situation where the team that he goes to, if you have a really solid, sound defensive defenseman, that would be a good compliment for Parekh to go to that situation and to have somebody kind of cover some of his ground, while also then allowing him to fully maximize his offensive talents. But still, it's hard to argue the talent. It will be interesting to see if he is potentially an option for the Wild at 13. We will finish with a look at Liam Greentree. That is on the way as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder, we've got another episode coming for you later this evening. Something is up with the Detroit Red Wings, and I just want to talk through a scenario that is starting to rattle around in my head. But first, who is Liam Greentree? Greentree of the Windsor Spitfires of the OHL is a forward prospect, 6'2", 214. He's also a left-hand shot out of Canada. Here's what Elite Prospects has to say. Greentree navigates his way around opponents with a series of look-offs, give-and-goes, and a sophisticated delay game that allows him to problem-solve his way around numbers off the rush. He's constantly scanning, registering his options, and the obstacles that would keep him from getting them the puck. This past season for the Windsor Spitfires, he was the captain, had 36 goals, 54 assists, 90 points in 64 games. The year before that, he had 25 goals and 20 assists in 61 games for Windsor. He also played on the World Junior Championship team for Canada with 2 goals, 2 assists in 7 games. Let's get to Scott Wheeler's thoughts on Liam Greentree. Greentree is an interesting one because he was just okay at last summer's Hlinka Gretzky Cup and played his way to a diminished role at this spring's U18 Worlds. After he stood out in pre-tournament, he seemed to struggle with the pace against the better teams for Canada, but he was tremendous all year long for Windsor and one of the most consistent game-to-game players in the OHL. Last year on a deep Spitfires team, his consistency made him a regular factor. He scored 25 goals, and he was named to the league's first all-rookie team. This year, he was named captain of the Spitfires as they began a rebuild and led the team in scoring by a wide margin. His 90 points were 24 more than his nearest teammates, to prove he could drive offense himself. But despite having a makeup including size, strength, shot, secondary skill, work ethic, habits, and more, that usually lends itself to being universally well-liked. And despite a strong showing at the CHL NHL Top Prospects game, in which he scored, was robbed, and had multiple looks, in a measuring stick game against other top prospects, he has some skeptics. Greentree is a big, strong kid whose game is all about being around it. He finds his ways onto pucks inside the offensive zone, stays on them, wins battles, keeps his feet moving, though a little slowly from a standstill, even though he's not the quickest player, plays an opportunistic style, and then has decent skill and an NHL release. The puck comes off his stick hard and quickly and hits its spots. Wheeler says he hasn't seen a dynamic quality and his skating needs work, though his speed is decent when he gets going, and it's more through his first few steps. But he's got a pro size and a well-rounded toolkit, and showed more and more individual skill to build out a nice statistical profile to complement the completeness of his game this season. Nobody was surprised when he was named Windsor's captain either. He's not going to be a frontline guy, but he looks like he's got the makings of a solid NHL forward who can play up and down a lineup. When one part of his game isn't working, he typically had a B game to fall back on. Concerns about his pace of play and lack of a dynamic quality have left some believing he's more of a late first or second than a top 20 guy, but Wheeler says he thinks a team could benefit from not reading too much into his U18s. Dayton Reimer of the Hockey Writers has a little more on Liam Greentree. Here are the rankings. NHL Central Scouting ranks Greentree 12th among North American skaters. Future Considerations has him 14th. Elite Prospects has him 12th. Peter Berrettini's March rankings have him 12th. Logan Horn's April rankings have him 17th. Andrew Forbes' February rankings had him 24th. Smot Scouting had him 6th. Bob McKenzie's got him 17th. Craig Button, 13th. Dauber Prospects, 13th. And Recruit Scouting, 15th. So here is what Dayton Reimer has to say. Of all the forwards available at the 2024 NHL Draft, Liam Greentree might be among the hardest workers. The Windsor Spitfires were one of the worst teams in the Ontario Hockey League this season, posting just 18 wins in 68 games and allowing 360 goals against, the highest total by a wide margin. But they weren't the worst, and a lot of that is thanks to their captain, Liam Greentree, who put the team on his shoulders and made a strong case as to why he should be a top 15 pick for the 2024 draft. Greentree's bread and butter is his shot, specifically his wrister. Being a bigger player, he can get a lot of power behind his shot, which already makes it a weapon, allowing him to fire the puck from anywhere in the offensive zone and get it by the goalie. His range has drastically improved from his rookie season, in which he scored 25 goals, most of which came close to the net. But what makes Greentree's shot so dangerous is his quick release. He hardly needs any room to fire off a hard, accurate shot, and the speed he can release it makes it incredibly difficult for goalies to track. Add in a powerful backhand, and you have one of the better shooters in this draft class. It's no wonder he led the Spitfires with 36 goals in 64 games and was voted the third most dangerous in the goal area by the OHL's Western Conference coaches. Scoring is far from the only thing Greentree can do. He's a fantastically creative player who can move the puck as though it were on a string. His puck controls, especially while moving, is not an easy skill to learn, but he makes it look almost effortless. His ability to think of a quick solution while being pressured can create some incredibly highlight-worthy goals and plays, and his slipperiness is comparable to much smaller players like Luke Misa and Berkeley Catton. Yet Greentree stands 6'2" and weighs in at 198 pounds already, which gives him a reach and a strength advantage that few top-end playmakers possess. But one thing scouts keep coming back to is Greentree's work ethic. As previously mentioned, the Spitfires were a terrible team this season, which put their captain in a difficult situation as he was tasked to do pretty much everything. Kill penalties, play on the power play, be the primary playmaker, and the team's go-to scorer. Yet he rose to the occasion and did it all, and did it well. His 36 goals and 54 assists not only led the team, he outpaced the next highest scorer on Windsor by 24 points. That's already impressive on its own, but considering he's also one of the youngest players on the Spitfires and had little support around him, it's almost inconceivable. Greentree isn't without his flaws, of course. His skating lacks a top gear, especially in a straight line, which can lead to him getting outpaced quickly, and his stride is a bit lumbering. He also isn't consistently aware of his surroundings, creating unnecessary turnovers, although part of that can be blamed on the team around him. And despite his size and strength, he isn't the most physical player. But when looking at the whole package, Greentree looks to be developing into a modern power forward who blends high offense with an incredible motor that never quits. And a player like that will only continue to get better and better. Draft projection for Liam Greentree. There's no doubt that Greentree will be a first-round pick. We'll have some competition when it gets past the top 10. Who goes first, however, will likely be a matter of taste. Policygenius has a fantastic shot. Michael Brantsig-Nygaard is a fantastic skater. And Igor Shiraznov is aggressive on the puck. But Greentree has continued to stand out, blending size, scoring ability, and a never-quit motor into a very intriguing package. Even if those other players are picked ahead of him, he won't fall out of the top 16. NHL potential, although frequently described as a power forward, Greentree doesn't project to be a hard-hitting, goal-scoring menace in the NHL like Jerome McGinley or Cam Neely. Instead, he looks more like Jason Robertson, who had similar issues when he was with the Kingston Frontenacs. Greentree will need some time to iron out his skating to get it to an NHL average level, but there's a chance that he could emerge as a 40-goal, 80-point player in the right system. Folks, his strength, shot and shot variety, creativity with the puck, and high motor. Areas to improve: physicality, skating and quickness, and consistency in decision-making. And, you look at, obviously, this is something that is intriguing because of his size profile and the shot. The two things that really jump out, the size and the shot. But the thing that I think is a red flag here is the speed, because you look at adding to that mix for this Minnesota Wild team. I still consider speed something that should be looked at with pretty much every prospect in the draft. Now you can't teach size, and so that certainly is something that sets Greentree apart. And so, I was reading all those things about the work ethic, about the size, and right up until the point that he wasn't really a physical player, I was like, I could definitely see the Wild go in this direction. But Greentree, size and shot, I think, are the two words that probably describe him best. And so, will that be enough for the Wild to be swayed to pick him if he's there at 13? Time will tell. That will do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We got another episode coming for you later. Something's up with the Detroit Red Wings. We'll talk about that. And just, again, we'll continue to keep an eye out for what to expect ahead of Friday. So stay tuned for another episode coming up here later. Make sure you hit the like button if you have not already, so you don't miss out on any future episodes of Locked On Wild. We've got you covered every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.